Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be full of some good budget-friendly dinner inspiration. I'm going to be sharing 5 meals, 3 of which were all new to us, and then 2 longtime family favorites. Everything in this video turned out truly delicious, so if you are needing help with your meal planning and just looking for some simple ideas for the average person, you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. First up, I made some Salisbury steaks. This is the same recipe that I have used for several years now, and we love it every single time. It is so quick and easy to make. So in this bowl, I have 1 pound of ground beef. I seasoned it well with some garlic and onion powder, salt and pepper. I threw in a few dashes of Worcestershire sauce, just a little bit of ketchup, and an even smaller amount of mustard. And lastly, a 1/3 cup of some Italian-style breadcrumbs. So I'm going to get in there with my hands, and I'm going to mix this until it is just combined. You don't want to sit there and overwork it. But this basically tastes like meatloaf patties that's going to be in a brown gravy. Although I have never put mustard in any meatloaf recipe. I know that may sound weird, but you just got to kind of trust me on that one. It works out so well. But now I am going to start forming these into the patty. So I like to sit there and kind of smush it into a pitiful little rectangle. That way I can go in with a knife and cut it into 4 sections. That is just me trying to get these into as equal portions as I possibly can, but never truly works out that way, but it's okay. So forming hamburger patties is definitely not one of my strong suits. That is why I love a good smash burger. And when I make like regular hamburgers, I have a hamburger press, which helps a lot. But remember, we're not making hamburgers. We're making Salisbury steaks, so they can be a little ugly. It's okay. So I'm done with those for now. I'm going to start working on some Instant Pot mashed potatoes. So I'm just using all the russet potatoes that I had in my pantry. I peeled them, washed them, and now I'm just cutting them into large chunks. I'm going to add in about 1 cup of chicken broth to the bottom of my Instant Pot, and I'm going to dump in all of those potatoes, and I'm going to season them with salt. Potatoes need a lot of salt, so I like to add it during the cooking process as well as after, but I'm going to get my lid added on, turn it on, and set that timer for 10 minutes. While those are going, I'm going to start frying up the Salisbury steak. So my skillet was really hot before I added these in. I was going to leave in some of the sounds so y'all could hear the sizzle, but Josh was blaring some Dr. Phil in the background, so I think I'll just leave that out. But trust me when I say my skillet was hot. But I'm just going to let those cook for a few minutes on each side. As you can see, it has a beautiful sear on it, which is what we love. That is what we are looking for. When it comes to stuff like this, I will only flip it once. That way it can form that crust. And you'll know these are done when the juices start running clear up at the top of it. So I'm going to remove it to a separate plate. If you were to use a leaner ground beef, you could skip this step. But I like to buy 80/20 ground beef, so I wanted to get rid of all that grease on the bottom, so I just wiped it out. So now I'm going to get started on the gravy. I've added 2 cups of hot water to my skillet, and you need 2 packets of brown gravy. I have this big container, so I'm measuring out 6 tablespoons of it. When I bought that, I thought that I would use it a lot more, but I really don't use it that often, so that was kind of my inspiration for making this meal on this night, is to use up some of that brown gravy. But I added in just a little bit more Worcestershire sauce and just a tiny bit of ketchup, and now I'm whisking that until it's smooth. Typically I would do this gravy in a separate bowl, then pour it in the pan. This was the first time doing it this way, and it was a lot harder to get the lumps out, so I don't recommend doing it that way. But basically, I just added the hamburger patties back in and let it all simmer together until it's thick and bubbly. That is done. Now I'm going to finish up the mashed potatoes. So once the timer was up, I did a quick release. The potatoes were perfectly tender, and I've added some butter, heavy cream, salt, and pepper. And I'm just going in with my handheld electric mixer, and I'm going to mix it until it's nice and smooth. So I gave it a taste test at that point, and it definitely needed some help. So I've added in some more butter, more heavy cream, and more salt and pepper. And I just did that until I was happy with it. This is a bigger batch than what I would typically make, but I'm going to be doing something cool with the leftovers. You just have to watch and see. But here's my plate. I have one of the Salisbury steaks, plenty of the mashed potatoes with some of that brown gravy over it, and I just served it with a side of peas and some box shells and cheese. That is my son's current two favorite sides, but everyone was happy with this meal, and it just wows me every time to the point I ask myself why I don't make it more often. And I'm pretty sure this was the first time I've done mashed potatoes in the Instant Pot, and it was definitely quicker than the stovetop method. Up next, I'm making some pierogi quesadillas. So I've got the tortilla land tortillas, which if you've been with me, you know this is our favorite brand of tortillas. You can find it in the refrigerated section at most grocery stores. They are seriously so good. But you do have to cook them first, which is why I pulled out the Blackstone so that I could get all of these done at the same time. I wanted to leave the sound in on that last clip because to me, that's what happiness sounds like. It was such a pretty day. The birds were chirping. Josh and the kids were playing basketball in the driveway. And I was just so excited to be using the Blackstone again after these last few really cold months. So anyways, on a small section of it, I have added some butter and I'm going to add some diced ham down. I've had this ham in the freezer for Lord only knows how long. I'm not even sure. But I wanted to fry it up first because, for one, I wanted to remove the excess moisture. And also, I just wanted to kind of brown it, give it some more flavor. And also, I wanted to say that I know that this looks like it's not a lot of ham compared to this huge griddle, but I can promise you it was the perfect amount. But I've got that removed to a separate bowl. And now I'm going to pull out those leftover mashed potatoes. So I did warm them up in the microwave first just to make them easier to spread. And I'm just spreading that onto the whole tortilla. I repeated that to 4 of them. And now I am just buttering up the whole grill because that is what I'm going to fry the quesadillas up in. And I'm just adding all 4 of those down. I'm going to add that diced ham over the top of the mashed potatoes, followed by some shredded cheese. Use any shredded cheese that you want to. I just grabbed what I had open in my refrigerator. Then I'm just going to seal it with the rest of the tortillas. And that is it ingredient-wise for the quesadillas. Now, when I told my husband that I was making these, he did not look too excited. But when it came time to actually eat these, he was seriously impressed. Just like all of us. Like, this is just a reminder that even simple things can be incredibly delicious as well. And again, super budget friendly. So I thought these turned out perfectly. I did cook them on a low heat on the Blackstone since they do cook so hot. And I was just happy with the turnout. So I cut it into 4 sections and that's what they look like. Seriously, so good. I'm going to serve it with some lemon pesto rice. I have never made this before. I have been looking for some new rice ideas. So I started by heating up a couple tablespoons of canola oil. Any oil will work. And then I added in 1 cup of some white long grain rice that I washed. I'm toasting it up. I'm going to add in a big spoonful of minced garlic. I seasoned the rice with salt, and I'm just going to continue toasting that up for just a few minutes. So I also wanted to note that I did get this rice started before I went out to the Blackstone. That way everything would be done at the same time and everything's nice and hot. But anyways, I'm adding in 2 cups of chicken broth as well as the juice of half of a lemon. I love my little juicer there. It's so handy. But I'm going to quickly mix that in and I'm going to wait for this to come up to a boil. Once it starts boiling, I'm going to get a lid added on and turn the heat down to a simmer. And I'm going to let this cook for about 25 minutes without lifting up the lid, and you should have perfectly fluffy rice. So for the last step, you're going to grab some pesto, a 1/4 cup of it, and you're going to continue mixing that in until the pesto is mixed all throughout the rice. And that is it. Like I said, I have been on the hunt for some new rice recipes and just some different flavors, and this hit it out of the park. I loved the brightness of the lemon, and that pesto flavor was just so delicious and different, which is exactly what I wanted. So For my quesadilla, I have some sour cream and some A1 sauce to dip it up into. Trust me, it goes so good with this. And again, I have a good serving of that rice. You definitely have to love pesto to like this rice, though. It's very strong, but we love pesto here. But honestly, this whole meal is probably one of my favorite things that I have made in 2023. It is definitely a must make. I highly recommend it. On this night, I'm trying out a recipe from this Pioneer Woman cookbook. Josh recently got me this one, and I have been really liking the recipes in it so far. I can't really pronounce this, but I'm doing the speedy pork scaloppini. That's how I'm going to say it. Here is what her version looks like. So I've got 4 pork chops laid out. As you can see, they are not on the thick side, but I'm going to pound them out to be even thinner. And then I'm just going to season both sides with some salt and pepper. Now, I'm going to talk about something that could be a little bit controversial, but it is important to me, and it's just something that I have learned over the years. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I think it's very important to buy the highest quality of pork chops that you know about, because I hate to even say it, but I can't tell you how many times I have purchased pork chops from Walmart, and no matter what I do, they turn out dry and tough. And, I know I'm not overcooking them, but for over a year now, I have been buying Uncle Charlie's pork chops. I am not sponsored in any way, and if you're local to me, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but they have the absolute best pork chops, and everything I make with them just turns out incredible. I've also had pretty good luck out of Kroger pork chops, so that's my message. Just use high quality pork if you want the best results. Moving on, here I'm just setting up the bowls that I'm going to bread the chicken with. So in the first bowl, I have about a half a cup of all-purpose flour. I've just added some salt and pepper, and I'm giving that a quick mix. In the second bowl, I'm adding about a half a cup of milk, and I'm going to crack in 1 egg, and I will of course whisk that together very well, making sure that egg is perfectly broken up. And then in the last and final bowl, I'm just adding some plain panko breadcrumbs. So I just want to show y'all that this pork chop is well seasoned before anyone tries to tell me these are going to be bland. But now I'm going to start breading them. So I'm going to start by rolling it around in the flour, making sure to shake off any excess, and then that's going to get dunked into that milk and egg mixture. And then lastly, roll it around in the panko breadcrumbs. Again, make sure every inch and crevice is fully coated, and definitely press it in to make sure that it's going to stick very well. But here's what it should look like. I'm just going to repeat that to the others. And then to a large skillet, I'm going to melt down some butter. I'm also going to add in some olive oil. And once that is nice and hot, I'm going to drop in my pork chops. Now, I know that I'm always preaching to never overcrowd your pan, but I really did not want to cook this in batches, so I just went with it. I really hate when the sides are touching because it does affect the cooking time and all that, but it all worked out in the end. So anyways, I just cooked this for a few minutes on each side. Here's what I'm talking about. Those last 2 pork chops didn't get nearly as brown, but here they are once they were all done. Like I said, it all worked out in the end. I'm going to let that drain on some paper towels. And now I'm going to get started on this sauce that goes over it. So I melted down a little bit more butter. I threw in a couple tablespoons of flour, and I'm whisking that together. And I'm going to let that cook until it is golden brown. Then I'm going to add in some white wine. I believe this was a Chardonnay. I'm not a wine expert, not even close. I don't drink it. But I'm pretty sure one of you guys told me that that's a good wine to cook with. So my next question is, how long will that stay good in the refrigerator for? Because I don't know what to do with the rest of it. I also added in about a 1/3 cup of chicken broth, and I'm just stirring. I'm going to add in the other half of that lemon that I had into it, the juice of it, of course. And then I'm just seasoning it to taste with some salt and black pepper. And that is it for the sauce. I should probably mention that Ree Drummond adds capers into her sauce. I have never had capers before. I don't know what they taste like, so I was afraid to try it out, but let me know what they taste like if you know. But I served it over some angel hair pasta. I topped it with the sauce, some shaved Parmesan cheese, and parsley. I have extra lemon to squeeze over everything, and I served it with some asparagus. I think this is beautiful, and y'all, it tasted like something out of a fancy restaurant. It was absolutely incredible, and honestly, I believe it takes the #1 spot for best recipe in this video. On this night, I'm going to be making some homemade French fries and some garlic Parmesan chicken drumsticks. So starting starting with the fries. I have 4 russet potatoes that I have washed and scrubbed really well. I cut those into large slices, and then I just cut them into the shape of a fry. I do like the peeling on my fries, but you could peel those if you wanted to. I also really like a thicker cut fry, so I left them into thick pieces. But I'm just going to add those to a large mixing bowl, and I am going to get these covered with water. I'm going to let these soak for 30 minutes because it's going to help them get crispy as it removes a lot of that starch. So while those were soaking, I prepped my drumsticks. So I'm just drying those off with a paper towel. I have really been on the hunt as well for some new chicken leg recipes because it is such an underrated cut of meat in my opinion. I think they're delicious and they are really inexpensive. I just don't have that many recipes for them other than like barbecue chicken legs or like fried chicken legs. So needless to say, I was really excited when I came across this recipe. So I just drizzle those in some olive oil, season them with a healthy amount of garlic, sea salt, and black pepper. I'm just going to get in there with my hands and toss those around really good just to make sure that every bit of it is fully seasoned. I lined a cookie sheet with some tin foil and I topped it with a cooling rack, and I'm just getting my chicken laid out. Definitely make sure that the chicken is not touching. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees and you want to bake it anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. Pretty sure mine were done in 30 minutes. I like to use a meat thermometer to help me. But as soon as I put those in the oven, I finished off my fries. So I drained off that water after the 30 minutes, laid them out on some paper towels, and I'm just taking another paper towel and just kind of blotting the top. You definitely want to make sure they are as dry as possible. I dried out my mixing bowl, added those potatoes in, and just like with the chicken, healthy amount of olive oil. And I love this steak and shake seasoning for like any type of potato dish. So that is the main seasoning that I am going to be using for these. So I'm going to add quite a lot. I don't like bland potatoes, but you definitely have to find the balance so that you don't oversalt them. But I just tossed those around. I am going to be air frying these, so I sprayed my air fryer with some Pam, threw in those potatoes, and they were just looking a little bit blah, so I just stopped it with some black pepper. So I'm going to get those put in the air fryer, and I'm going to cook them at 390 degrees. I set the timer for 25 minutes, but it did take an additional 5 minutes, and you have to go in every now and then to shake the basket in order for them to cook evenly. So now I'm getting started on the sauce that's going to be poured over the chicken. You want to melt some butter down. A stick was definitely too much for that amount of chicken. I would definitely adjust that next time. But I also recently learned that you can freeze chopped garlic. So this is my first time doing that. I pulled that straight from the freezer, dumped it in, and cooked it for a few minutes. I pulled it from the heat, and I'm adding in lots of dried parsley and some Parmesan cheese, and that is it for the sauce. So this is definitely like something that you would pour over chicken wings. So just imagine that these are chicken wings, but just like jumbo size. That is the vibe I was going for. So that's what they look like straight from the oven. I know they don't look too exciting yet, but you just wait. I'm adding those back on into that mixing bowl. And now we're going to drizzle that delicious garlicky Parmesan butter over the top. Now, doesn't that look so much better? So those look great. Here's the fries once they were fully cooked. I think that they look great as well. Nice and crispy, tender on the inside. I've got one of those chicken drumsticks. It was so flavorful, juicy, and tender. The fries always come out good, and I love how that like garlic butter like seeped into the fries, making them even better. And I served it with some raw cauliflower and cucumber with some ranch to dip it in. I have been craving that. And also, since we were going for the wing vibe, like this is what I would want to order at a restaurant. Like this is how I would want my plate to look. But you guys, it was so delicious. Definitely a 10 out of 10, a new family favorite. I most definitely will be making this on repeat. Last but certainly not least, I'm going to make a pot of some good old Kentucky chili. That's what I'm going to start calling it. This is our favorite way to make chili, and honestly, I haven't done it this way all winter long, simply because my dad's been making it. We've been having it plenty over at his house, so I just haven't thought to put it on my meal plan, but I wanted to do that before it started heating back up. Although I am a believer in like soups and things year round, chili is one thing that I just kind of non-purposely make a wintertime meal. Also, this was the very first meal I made when we first moved into this house back in 2013. I feel like everyone always remembers that first meal because it is special, and I would love to hear in the comments what was your first night meal in your house. But yeah, so I started by cooking up a pound of ground beef. I seasoned it with salt, pepper, onion, and garlic powder, drained the grease, and then I added in a can of tomato sauce. Normally, I fill up the can with water and add it in, but I had some tomato juice in my fridge, so I use that instead. I also add in 1 can of chili beans, juice and all, and 1 packet of chili seasoning. Now, my favorite chili seasoning is the French's Chili-O seasoning that's in a yellow package, but they didn't have that at my local grocery store, so I didn't plan very well, but the Save-A-Lot stuff was really good as well. I'm going to season this just like I did the meat with some salt and pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. Now, I almost forgot, but thankfully I didn't. I love to add a good amount of brown sugar into my chili. That amount doesn't make it sweet, but it just balances everything, and to me, it is what makes it so excellent. So I'm going to make sure that's melted in very well. Once it's nice and bubbly, I'm going to cover it and, let it simmer for as long as you want. I just always say a minimum of at least 30 minutes. Definitely stir every now and then as well. So here's something else controversial and something that seems to get people in an uproar, but in my opinion, spaghetti noodles does belong in chili. This is how I was raised to have it. It's how I've known it my whole life. I don't add a lot. I do maybe a quarter of a box, and I do cook it separately and just kind of add it in by the spoonful. That way the pasta water can kind of get in there and thicken it a little bit and just make it the consistency that we love. But that is it. Very easy. I can remember this off the back of my hand, and it's just delicious. We like to top it with some shredded cheese and some crushed saltine crackers. And we serve it with either grilled cheese or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. If you've not done that before, I promise you it goes together so well. And then, of course, you stir it all together and the saltine crackers kind of soak up the tomato sauce. And this is just like a picture of my childhood, and just everyone in the house loves it. So that is all I got for y'all in today's video. I really hope that you guys like the recipes in it. I want to thank y'all so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.